For one reason or another, the Ojama cards have always had a very dedicated fan base. And I don't even mean when they got Ojama Country, which is a big deal for that archetype, but even since they were just normal monsters appearing in the artwork of a couple other cards, people seem to really latch on to the Ojama monsters, and that's pretty crazy. And what's even cooler is that in 2018, you can even play these cards. You can play them in an ABC Buster Dragon deck, and obviously that deck is a little bit hurt because A-Core is limited. However, the Ojama ABC Buster deck did see some regional success, which is pretty crazy. It actually made fairly decent use of all of the Ojama cards in combination with ABC cards, but overall the Ojama cards, while they haven't ever really made an impact on the format, have always been in the back of several people's minds just in case they ever become good. Cards like Ojama Red and Ojama Blue actually are pretty decent cards, and Ojama Magic actually can add a whole bunch of stuff to your hand for discard fodder. There are some admittedly pretty cool interactions going on in the Ojama archetype. Now, if you don't know why I'm making this video today, I mean, obviously it's fun to talk about the Ojama cards, and I certainly am going to cover some of the better ones. However, some of you already know why we're doing this if you were on the live stream a couple nights ago, and basically what happened is that House of Champs, my good friend John Moore, put out a challenge to the people in the live stream, and he said if $300 was donated during that one live stream, that I would be forced to make a video analyzing the Ojama bulges. And I didn't think it would hit that, and after like 30 minutes it only had $40, but one brave person, one hero of the people, donated $260 just for me to analyze these bulges, these banana hammocks of these Ojama monsters. And I'm a man of my word, so the start of this video will be spent talking about something that I never thought would come up on this channel, and that is the Ojamas and what's down there. Now, as someone who admittedly doesn't find the Ojama monsters or their outfits very attractive, I will be analyzing these different than many other people. So if you find this sort of thing attractive, maybe your list would be the exact opposite. But I will be going from least scary to scariest, starting out with Ojama Yellow. And the reason that Ojama Yellow is the lowest one on this list, the least scary, is because on the original artwork you actually can't see it. It's hidden by his beer belly, and that's perfectly fine. Now, it is worth mentioning on other Ojama artworks you eventually do see this part of him. However, on that original artwork you do not, so he will be the least scary, at least in my mind. Next up, I think Ojama Blue is pretty okay. Not only is Ojama's Blue's bulge not as prominent, also it looks like he's not really thrilled to be wearing the outfit. It's kind of like he was dragged along and he got pressured by the Ojama Country to actually wear their outfit of the people, but he doesn't look like he's really into it. And I think one of the reasons that some of these Ojamas are so frightening is because they're just owning it, and owning it a little too much. So I'll put Ojama Blue pretty low on the list, and then also I will put Ojama Knight pretty low on the list because unlike all of these other Ojama cards, I think it's the only Ojama card that is actually wearing clothing, so that one isn't that bad at all. Even if he is wearing sort of a really frightening thong, at the very least I think it's over his armor, which makes it not nearly as bad. The two that I feel sort of lukewarm about are Ojama Green and Ojama King. These ones I'm kind of undecided. They feel like they're not that bad, but they're not as good as the ones that I just mentioned. They're still there and they're pretty prominent, but they're not as in your face as my top two picks. So my top two picks for most scary Ojama bulges. First off, at number 2 we have Ojama Black, and I think as a kid this was the one that frightened me the most. I mean, just, oh my god, like, look at it. I mean, don't look at it, but also if you want to know, like, you can look at it. It's there, and it's looking me in the face, and it's that one. Let's just move on. So the number one scariest one I feel is Ojama Red, and I don't know what it is. I think it's because it's kind of hiding in plain sight. The Ojama itself is red, the background is red, his underwear is red, so you don't really notice it until you look at the card artwork closely, and by then it's too late because now you got this Ojama ding dong sort of in your face and you can't escape it and you can't unsee it either. So I think Ojama Red has to be the worst Ojama bulge just because it is sort of hidden in plain sight and it pops out at you, which is pretty frightening. Now that I've spent 5 minutes making sure that this video gets demonetized, let's talk about the actual Ojama cards and their power level. Sort of the main combo piece, despite the fact that it by itself doesn't do anything. I mean, it literally does, you can't activate the card. Ojamagic is one of the most crucial parts of the Ojama strategy because it adds one of each green, yellow, and black to your hand, and that's fairly useful, and it combos really nicely with Ojama Country, which is by far probably the most powerful card for a pure Ojama deck. And what Ojama Country does is that once per turn you can send one Ojama card from your hand to the graveyard to special summon an Ojama monster from your graveyard, and obviously that effect can discard that Ojamagic, which is pretty powerful. And then also, most importantly, while you control a face-up Ojama monster, the attack and defense of all monsters on the field are switched. The reason that this matters is because if you haven't noticed by now because you were distracted, all of the Ojama monsters have 0 attack points, and that was probably the biggest hurdle for many Ojama players before Ojama Country came out. How do you do any damage with a whole deck full of 0 attack monsters? Obviously, there's cards like Ojama Delta Hurricane that were designed to clear boards, but even if you somehow managed to resolve that in an old school Ojama deck, it's not like you could really capitalize on the board clear anyway because you didn't have anything to attack with. So Ojama Country really does make a huge difference in modern pure Ojama decks. In terms of the actual backbone of the Ojama monsters, look no further than red and blue. These cards are incredibly powerful, and even though they're not really quite up to modern standards, they're still pretty good. Blue has a fairly decent, albeit slower, search effect, and red can special summon a whole bunch of monsters from your hand, and that's actually fairly decent. I think red is the one that sort of has aged the best out of all of these cards. Special summoning up to 4 monsters from your hand is still fairly good, even if those monsters by themselves aren't that powerful. And I think in 2018 especially, you can sort of leverage those cards into link monsters, into exceeds monsters, all sorts of cards that you wouldn't have been able to summon back in the day when Ojama Red first came out. So I think Ojama Red, more so than any of these other cards, has aged the best, but even Ojama Blue is still pretty good. In terms of someone looking to play a non-pure version of Ojamas in 2018, look no further than Ojama Assimilation. This card is actually really powerful, and it's a pretty cool piece of support to sort of link Ojamas to ABCs and even some other union strategies if you want to. But the whole point of this card is that it lets you trade, well, banish Ojama cards from your hand, face up on the field, or the graveyard to special summon the different parts of ABC Buster Dragon, and that's not that bad. At best, this thing can be an emergency teleport for 3 monsters at no cost to you, and in the graveyard you get to shuffle back the Ojama cards to get a free draw. This card actually has ridiculously good card economy. You get 3 special summons, you get a free draw. Oh, and neither of the effects are once per turn. So the whole ABC Ojama deck that was around, the whole point of it was to use cards like Ojamagic to add a whole bunch of Ojamas to your hand, and then use this card to just trade all those Ojama monsters for ABC Buster Dragons. Now, like I mentioned, obviously this is a little bit more difficult to do because Assault Core is limited. However, before that happened, this actually was a fairly decent rogue deck that I lost to a few times, not at a regional qualifier, but on live streams. And when it went off, when you drew the right combination of cards and didn't draw too many normal monsters, it really went off. And that was really cool. And I think that of all the new Ojama support, this card in particular is the one that a lot of people were most excited about, because for the first time you weren't just playing Ojama cards for a meme deck, you were actually playing them for a dedicated deck that already was a good rogue contender, and also you play them for a very specific combo that when it went off was crazy powerful, and that's awesome. I mean, don't get me wrong, Ojama Country is a very cool card, but even the best Ojama Country decks never saw nearly as much success or experimentation in a competitive Yu-Gi-Oh setting as the Ojama ABC deck. So it's a real shame that Assault Core got limited. Obviously, just in general, it's really sad, but specifically for Ojama players that were looking forward to playing an Ojama strategy, the fact that Assault Core is limited basically means you can't play that deck anymore. It just wouldn't have enough longevity to keep the deck going and going and going. You can only summon so many ABC Buster Dragons, and if the Assault Core ever gets interrupted, you're pretty much completely out of the game for the rest of the duel. Anyway though, hopefully you guys enjoyed this analysis video. I know it's a little off the beaten path for what I usually post, or at least the first half was, but if someone's going to go out of their way to donate that much money, almost $300 of their own money, just to see me analyze certain aspects of the Ojama physique, well, of course I'm going to do that. And thank you to House of Champs for putting together one of the worst donation challenges I've ever heard in my entire life. Going forward, I will make sure to never have him on the stream ever again. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you later. Goodbye.